These are must-draft rookie players in the first and second rounds of your rookie drafts. So let's get into it. Nate, you're going to start it off. You're starting it off with a good one, and I'll tell you what, the more I think about this guy, the more I watch him, the more I like him. Body control specialist. Who do you got?
Yeah, I'm really excited. And anytime I have a late first round pick, I'm looking at Brian Thomas Jr. as my pick. In just about every single league. I love Brian Thomas Jr., what he brings to the table. At 6'4", 205 pounds. He's a big wide receiver. He's got a big frame. He's got long arms. Because of that, he wins the contested catches. His contested catch rate is over 50%. He has been productive in that manner. And he was one of the best in the NCAA this year in catching touchdowns. He had 17. And I love just the fact that his body control, the contested catch ability is so good, but he's not just that contested catch outside wide receiver that we've seen, a couple prospects like that who excel in that one area, but do they excel in other areas? Brian Thomas does. He can create separation deep. He can be that deep threat. He can also create separation just throughout his routes, in and out of his cuts. He gets low well. He's got good agility for a player as big as him. And because of that, he's able to create separation, at the intermediate level, which is not something that we, usually see with those bigger wide receivers, unless they are kind of that true, alpha wide receiver. And I think Brian Thomas has that ability. And not just can he create separation, but can he create yards after the catch as well? He does do that pretty well. This year, he did average 5.7 yards after the catch. So not just a guy that catches the ball and falls down, adds a little spice after the catch as well. He really checks a lot of boxes for me. I'm really excited about him. He's going to be available between the 108 and the 201. I don't think he's going to leave the first round of most rookie drafts this year. I think he's going to be locked into that first round because he's going to get first round draft capital as well. And I think that's really going to lock him into that second half of the first round of your rookie draft. So, whether it's the 108, whether it's the 110, 111, I'm really happy to pick up Brian Thomas Jr. I think he's a value at all of those spots. And he's not just well-liked by us here at the Dynasty Rewind. He is well-liked by the NFL media. Daniel Jeremiah actually just put out his top 50 overall rankings, just all players across the board. And Brian Thomas Jr. came in at number 15 overall, Mike. He was the wide receiver 4 on Daniel Jeremiah's big board. So I'm really excited about Brian Thomas Jr. The NFL is really excited about him. You should be as well.
I want to talk about a guy who I want to get in the first round. If I can't get Marvin Harrison Jr., I want the quote-unquote consolation prize in this year's draft class at wide receiver. That is Brian Thomas's teammate, Malik Nabers. Great hands. He could run any route you give him. The ceiling is probably about as high as Marvin Harrison Jr.'s. Sometimes you talk about a guy like this, you almost have nothing to say because he's so good. But I love everything he does. Just when he catches the ball, he has a tendency, and it's not a bad tendency. It's just something I noticed. He catches the ball and he takes a step back, and it just makes the defender pause and think for a minute. And in that split second, he decides where I'm going to go, and the defender is just left speechless. And I understand that in the NFL, there's going to be defensive backs, savvy veterans, guys that have seen it all. And it might negate some of that with Malik Nabers, but just because of his lateral agility, his good hands, and just his smooth motions, I think that he's still more often than not going to win matchups like that against defensive backs. He's definitely, by all means, a top 5 player in this draft class. Yeah. I guess there's always circumstances where you never know what people are doing, and maybe there's like a huge quarterback run at the top end of the draft and it's a tight end premium league, so people just go crazy. You know what I mean? Like if there's 3 quarterbacks, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Brock Bowers, maybe he gets pushed out. I don't see it happening. It very well could. Should be top 5. This is a guy who could be a career wide receiver 1. Maybe not a career the wide receiver 1, but definitely I could see him cracking top 12 in the league, or at least really, really close to it. It's just the potential is there.
And just to piggyback off of that with Brian Thomas Jr., my thoughts on him. I have him kind of just below Malik Nabers. I think Brian Thomas, that top 25 dynasty wide receiver who's going to give you top 24 seasons. And I think Brian Thomas actually has the ability to put out a top 12 season, intermixed in there because of his just big time ability. But Malik Nabers also, like you said, I think he's going to have multiple wide receiver 1 seasons in his career.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's a guy too where you don't get him, you're going to regret it, because this could be the cheapest he could be in his career for all we know.
Probably.
Wherever you draft him right now with one pick. Nate, who's your next guy? Oh, look who it is.
I've been talking about him a lot. I'm really excited about him, and he's.
You know what? Plant your flag, man. There's nothing wrong with that.
And he just had a great Senior Bowl. Ladd McConkey. I am not leaving the second round without Ladd McConkey, and that's assuming he makes it to the second round by the time we actually get to our rookie drafts. Ladd McConkey, has kind of come out of nowhere because he's dealt with injury, and throughout his college career, that's kind of held him back from getting on the field as much as he really wanted to. At Georgia, he did miss time with a back injury, but Ladd McConkey, when he was on the field, was one of the top players for Georgia. And we saw that this year when he was on the field, 3.26 yards per route run. And Mike, anytime you're over 3 yards per route run, it is really impressive. And he did that this year. The first 2 seasons at Georgia, he was over 2, which is always a good sign. His freshman year actually was 2.71 yards per route run. As a true freshman for Georgia, coming up with 447 yards on 31 receptions and 5 touchdowns. So he had the early breakout. We haven't really talked about him as much throughout the season because he was injured, and we were all talking about Brock Bowers' injury. And Georgia, as good as they were not in the spotlight for a lot of the season. But Ladd McConkey, he deserves to be talked about with all the other wide receivers in this draft class, outside of the top 3 in the next tier, because I think he's that good of a route runner. He's got the speed. He's not a slower, non-athletic route runner. He's an athletic player who also has really, really good route running. His route running ability is pro ready, and he's got good hands to go with it. He has a great understanding of the game. He checks so many boxes for the NFL, and his versatility as well. He reminds me kind of like we talked about it. I think Doug Baldwin is a comp I saw earlier. Actually, Doug Baldwin comp came from Daniel Jeremiah, who I was just talking about in his top 50, and that leads me in a nice segue. Nice segue into saying that Ladd McConkey also was in the top 50 for Daniel Jeremiah. That's where I saw the Doug Baldwin comp, actually. 44th overall on his big board. I do have Ladd McConkey pretty much locked into the second round at this point, both in NFL drafts and early second for my rookie drafts, because I'm going to be picking Ladd McConkey up, not leaving him in the second round, because I think he gives me, moving forward in fantasy football, I think he's a top 30 wide receiver in Dynasty. I expect a baseline of a top 36 season with Ladd McConkey, and I think he's going to have multiple top 24 seasons in there as well. I think he's got that kind of talent. So playing that flag, Ladd McConkey coming to a theater near you soon. There we go.
Only thing that I'll say, and it's not a knock on him, I just don't think it's how Georgia ran their offense. I think he could be used as a runner as well.
Oh, I absolutely believe that. I think the versatility was used on some level, but he offers more versatility than even Georgia used him.
Yeah,
6 foot 185. He runs pretty strong after the catch. He can be used on sweeps, things like that. I like that.
And now I'm going to tell you about a player that I have to leave the second round of my drafts with. University of North Carolina wide receiver Tez Walker. Nate, we got to be real here. He's not a perfect prospect. He's messing around at Kent State for a while, transferring here, transferring there. The whole thing with UNC at the beginning of the year, then he could play, then he got banged up.
Not his fault.
But we're talking major upside. I don't know if he's ever going to be a wide receiver 1 on a team, but we've seen wide receiver 2s on teams be just fine. Devontez Smith is a number 2. T. Higgins was second fiddle to Jamar Chase. This is the type of upside I think we could have with Tez Walker. Physical guy, great burst after the catch, really hard to bring down. These are all things that I think he does well. Really good on slants in the middle of the field too. He opens up the middle of the field, makes the defense really think about what they have to do. I like that. And I'm okay with taking him anywhere in the second round, as high as like the 203. I think I would take Tez Walker. Unless all I had was the 201 and that was the last pick and I didn't think I could get back in, then I'll gladly take Tez there. And again, a solid career wide receiver too. But at the range you're taking him, you got to realize too, with not just him, but with everybody, not everybody's going to be a 1 at their position, and you're spending a second round draft pick. Let's say you spend a second round draft pick in 2024 and you get a career wide receiver 2. The guy's a wide receiver 2 on your team for 5 or 6 years. When you look back on it, was it really a bad price to pay? It really wasn't. Even if he's a lower end wide receiver 2 and you got him in your flex spot, you're fine with that. I love Tez
Mike.
Walker.
I'm seeing the early rumors of Tez Walker in the back half of the first round to the Chiefs. Maybe a first round pick if that happened.
Nate, who is the last player you want to talk about today?
Yeah, I don't know if it's the first or the second round, but either way, I don't want to leave my draft without this guy, and that's Jonathon Brooks. My RB1 in this draft class. Mike, I believe he's also your RB1 in the draft class. I was listening to some other fantasy analysts that I trust and respect, and the Jonathon Brooks love is not as common as I thought. There's some people out there that have Jonathon Brooks as the RB3, RB4, RB5 in the draft class. I'm happy to soak up the value if it's in the second round with Jonathon Brooks. I don't want to leave my draft without him. What he did this year was so impressive, and he was good his first year. Just didn't have a lot of opportunity because he was behind Bijan, behind Roshan. Texas is full of running backs. It's hard to get opportunity. But this year, 187 attempts, over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, average over 6 yards per carry, was a threat in the receiving game as well. 25 receptions. Look, Jonathon Brooks, he brings the full skill set to the table. He is coming off a knee injury though. And because of that, I think he's going to drop in value a little bit. I did already talk about earlier in the podcasts how Jonathon Brooks was projected to the Cowboys in the second round. So, he might not get that much of an injury discount if he goes to a great landing spot like that and gets the draft capital in the second round. But no matter what happens, people are going to be iffy on Jonathon Brooks because of the ACL injury, because that's what he's coming off of. We won't get to see him test really throughout the draft season. So there's going to be some unknown there with Jonathon Brooks. I want to take advantage of that. Any value I can get with him, if I can pick him up in the second round, I'm super excited. I think he brings, like I said, a full skill set. He's got the receiving ability. He's such a patient runner, and he just does so well with the little movements when he's at the line of scrimmage and getting into the second level. He makes people miss, and that ability to make people miss, create the yards after contact. He did average 3.91 yards after contact per attempt. That's really, really good. Anywhere close to 4 is really good. So 3.9, love to see that. Made 63 people miss. Missed tackles forced 63. I'm going to say that 63 people missed. There might be multiple people who are the same there. But Jonathon Brooks, I like him. I love him. He's my RB1. And it's not consensus. It's a year where there's no consensus RB1. So that means we can get the value of picking our player up at a better value. And Jonathon Brooks is that guy. I want to finish it off with my long-term fantasy expectations. Don't want to forget that, Mike. So I think he's a top 15 dynasty running back as soon as he's healthy. And I think he's competing for a top 12 finish within his second year.
All right, so let's get into my last one. And you know what? I like athletes that pay running back, Nate, unlike you.
Okay.
And that's why I want to leave my drafts with Florida State running back Trey Benson. Why? Thanks for asking. I'm going to tell you, he's a powerful, compact runner, and he has really good long speed too, Nate. Oh, and guess what? He's an above average receiving back with good pass protection. I like Trey Benson. He stands a little too upright for me. That can be fixed, by the way. There is things at the NFL called running back coaches. That's their job. They can fix things that players have deficiencies in coming into the NFL. I mean, look, it's probably late first, early second round pick, and that's okay. I'm completely fine with that because I think he is good enough and has the potential to be a team's running back 1 or at least the 1A. I do think he's that good. I think he's better than the last Florida State running back that people got enamored with in Cam Akers. I do. I think he's a more powerful runner and just as stronger. His play strength overall is stronger than Cam Akers. I like him better.
I don't hate Trey Benson, just not as big a fan of him as a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's fine. I don't know what your grade is on. Did you grade him out yet?
I still have a day 2 grade on him, so it's not like I dislike Trey Benson.
Thank you for listening. Thanks for hanging out. Again, just want to remind everybody, make sure you check out our free 7-day trial on Patreon. You will not regret it. So for Nate, I'm Mike. We'll see you next time.